Good evening. I'd like to call to order the special flood event meeting on May 22nd, 2013. Can I have the roll call, please?
Mayor Gunther.
Here.
The clerk's here. Trustee Addington.
Here.
Trustee Barker.
Here.
Trustee Barry.
Here.
Trustee Nero.
Here.
Trustee Scott.
Here.
Trustee Seneca. Here. Manager Searle.
Here.
Public Works Director Mann. Here. Director of Engineering Noriega. Here. Village Engineer Nicole. Here. Police Chief Mulhern.
Here.
Fire Chief Wise.
Here.
Public Information Coordinator McIntyre.
Here.
IT Manager Littlegeberg is in the booth. Finance Director Parker.
Here.
Village Planner Ziegler. Here. Administrative Assistant Makowski.
It's in the hall.
Economic Development Assistant Peterson. She's out there too.
She's out there too. All right, if we could please all rise and have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I want to thank everybody for coming this evening, and as we begin this meeting, I'd like to read the following statement into the record. On behalf of the Village Board, we want residents to know that we sincerely support the idea of finding solutions to the flooding issues that affected so many people of our town. It is because of the seriousness of this issue, we have convened this special meeting and invited public agencies, staff, and other guests to listen to the concerns of our community so that they can be addressed. At this time, I will turn over the floor to Larry McIntyre, who is our Westmont's Media Relations Coordinator, and he will continue to lead us this evening. Larry.
Thank you. We appreciate everybody coming out tonight to share with us your situations regarding this very difficult conversation. Flooding issues, not only in Westmont, but throughout DuPage County and throughout Northeast Illinois, have been increasing over the last 10 years. And with that, the severity of damages to people's properties continues to grow. And so the mayor and the board, they're absolutely right. We understand the severity of the issue before us, and we're going to ask everyone who wants to come up here tonight and share with us their situation. And we're going to stay as long as it takes, but we want to hear all of that. And then as we move through the meeting, by the time we get to the end, we're going to start talking about the next steps so that we can start addressing these issues. First, I'd like to introduce some of our invited guests. And I just met a lot of people for the first time tonight, so if you can just sort of raise your hand as I introduce you. But Tom O'Connor from Flag Creek, Nick from Downers Grove Sanitary District. I wasn't going to be able to say the last name properly, so I just passed that. Nick Kottmeyer from DuPage Public Works. So actually, Greg Phillips. All right, okay, thank you very much. And then David Gervino from Homeland Security. Thank you very much. John Dwyer is here from FEMA, and he's back there. We have Pete DeCiani with County Board, and Tony Charlton from DuPage Stormwater Management. And I've possibly missed a couple of folks, and we'll have you step forward in a little bit. We also have Wally Van Buren and Amy from the Sanitary District, so thank you so much for coming tonight. At this time, we're going to go to staff and give a few reports on what happened during this most recent flooding event, April 17th and 18th, and we'll start with police and fire.
Thank you, Larry. As we all know, on that morning, the police department responded to public safety requests for calls for service. The mean peak for our calls, for phone calls or calls for service to the Village Operations Center was at 7 o'clock in the morning. And as we all know, around 11 o'clock it stopped raining and the water started to recede in some areas. The police department responded again to calls for service. Our main concern at that morning was traffic control, flooded streets, cars flooded in roadways, and public safety issues. And Fire Chief will address, Weiss will address what the fire department responded to, but mainly our officers are responding to flooded cars, in roadways. Some were occupied, some were people sitting on top, and then also making sure that the roadways were blocked. Our biggest concern was the rush hour traffic. For those who were driving that morning, you could not get from one side of the town to the other because of roadways, but also because of the amount of traffic that was congested. And that's what we were mostly concerned with. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Weiss.
Thanks, Chief. As Chief Mulhern mentioned, the fire department responded to a large amount of calls than we normally do, like 44 calls in 12 hours. Most of our calls were for non-emergency response type calls where we had some trees down, wires down. We did have some people that were stuck in cars that tried to drive through flooded areas. We went and got them out. We did have 2 lightning strikes to 2 houses where we had 2 fires. One was in a flooded area, and we were able to control that situation very quickly. But for the most part, we did the same thing as the police department did. We were out visible in the neighborhoods all around throughout the village, even in some of the unincorporated areas that the fire department protects, to assist the residents with whatever they needed help with.
I want to mention real quickly that if you do plan to speak during the open forum, out in the front lobby there's an open forum request form, and you will need to fill that out per our protocols. So if you have not done so yet and you do plan to speak, please fill out those forms, and that can be ready. Also, John Kern from the county board is here tonight. Kern. All right, thank you. And then our representative from FEMA. Is he available? All right. This is John Dwyer, and he's going to speak a little bit about the federal assistance program.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor and trustees, and thank you, Fire Chief Weiss and Chief Mulhern. Thank you for letting me speak a little bit here tonight. FEMA is here at the request of your governor. We're working with your governor also closely with Dave Gravino of the Department of Homeland Security here in DuPage County. And tonight, what I'd like to ask you to do, if you've suffered any damage whatsoever from the flooding, to please register with FEMA. Whether you have insurance, don't have insurance, whatever, please register with FEMA. We have a team, a Corps, it's called FEMA Corps team here today with their iPads. They can register you right now. You can step off into the side room here to register, and you can also still be involved within the meeting. The meeting, you can be hearing what's going on in this meeting at the same time. So that's basically what I have to say. If you have any questions, we're over there. We have some disaster assistance flyers that you can pick up that'll be on the table over there. I would also, we work very closely with the SBA, the Small Business Administration. I would like to introduce Jack Kemp, who is their Public Information Officer, for some brief remarks about how SBA can help you in this disaster. Thank you.
Good evening. The Small Business Administration works hand in hand with FEMA in a disaster. Don't let our name fool you. In a disaster, the Small Business Administration helps homeowners and renters as well as businesses that have uninsured losses as a result of the disaster. Regardless of what your losses were, if it was due to those storms and winds and flooding that happened back in April, the Small Business Administration can help you with a low-interest, long-term loan for up to 100% of your uninsured losses. A lot of you are going to find that your insurance or grants or other funds available to you aren't going to cover all of your losses. The SBA is probably a good avenue for you to look into. And most of you, when you register with FEMA, will be referred to the Small Business Administration. Our interest rates start as low as 1.688% for homeowners and as low as 4% for businesses. Just remember, our job is to basically make you whole up to 100% of your uninsured losses. Thank you.
So just to reiterate that, FEMA representatives right now, if you go out to the hallway here through the side room, and then there's an access at the rear of that room, They're in this room that's right on the other side of this wall, but your path will be through there. They're there right now to help you. So if you have not filled out a disaster relief form yet, those folks are there with their iPads, and they will fill it out with you right there on the spot. And as John had mentioned, we have a TV and audio back there, so you won't miss any of the meeting whatsoever. If you want to take advantage of that, now would be the time. Otherwise, they'll probably be leaving maybe within the next hour or so, and then we can still assist you in terms of getting the information of how to fill out those fill out those forms online or over the phone. At this time, I'm going to introduce our Steve May from our Public Works, and he's going to talk through the storm event as well as some of the projects that we've done in the community over the last several years. Thanks.
We had, gave us staff reports with the other departments as far as our experiences on that day. I'm not going to try and describe, the regional events. Everybody who's, had the news or tried to get anywhere on that day was pretty well familiar with what happened across the entire area. But as far as what directly happened in Westmont, our local EMA, our Westmont EMA, maintains a weather station up on the North Fire Station. And this was just interesting because it was just, it affected how we were responded through the night as far as with Public Works. Obviously, the public safety departments respond to each individual call, and they communicate with Public Works when they need certain things. It's not, very obvious, but this is multiple days, and this was the Wednesday before, and you could see about 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon where we started getting weather difficulties or a lot of rain at that point, enough that Public Works had to be called out because there were 2 locations that were already where the streets were flooded and impassable, and they needed to be blocked off. So that response was done, and he went back in, and there was rain throughout the afternoon and the evening, just kind of steady off and on, and just continued to saturate everything that was in there. And this is where we really ran into trouble. About 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, we had very high precipitation that really was responsible for much of the road closures and the extraordinary flooding that we had. And as if that wasn't bad enough, 2 hours later, about 6:30 in the morning, another furious downpour came, and it was just, adding insult to what was already going on that day. So we had staff that was responding through the night, and then bulk of them were the ones that could get into work because everybody had trouble commuting that morning. Stayed on through the day and spent the morning mostly managing the road closures and the obstructions and protecting the areas that were flooding, or they were talked about the downed trees and branches and the other obstacles. So that, I'm just roughly describing what went on. That was pretty much through the middle of the day, and by the afternoon, the areas that went back in to try and offer assistance in other areas. Just for example, like in the morning, even this building took a little bit of water down in the basement. There was several inches that we were pumping out. And areas that we could pump, not difficulty, but sometimes pumping isn't as straightforward as pumping it. You have to have somewhere to pump it to. So when we were done with the few small pumps we have, and we have one very large 8-inch trailer-mounted pump, we're using it throughout the day. By the afternoon, when as bad as it was, much of it receded pretty quickly by the afternoon. And we were able to take resources and move them to other places, and in some cases even lent it to people to help pump out their homes and items like that. We stayed in through the night, again, watching, and then when there were opportunities where we could pump somewhere, we were. And I'm trying to think of when it all wrapped up on that first Thursday evening. It was about 10 o'clock at night. Came back in the next morning, and the ones that didn't recede down, like the usual problem areas that we have, we went back in and tried to, we still had road closures, and in one case we still had one block where it was flooded to the extent where people still didn't have access in and out of their homes. So we started drafting the water out of there and putting it in the storm sewer, because by Friday there was more capacity in the sewers to take that. And in one case, we even moved into Saturday, and there was a very long Saturday too. They went from sun up to sundown on that day. But by Sunday, things were pretty well cleared out. I made the map we're going to try and plot all that for the information, and the map that was made over there is an at-a-glance look at kind of what occurred during the town. It's not very high-tech, it's hand-drawn on there. It is no one person, myself, I got stuck on the north side of town looking at these areas. Besides the weather events and everything else, we had a problem with the railroad crossing where the gates were stuck down for a very long time and made, commuting across, the two halves of town difficult. So that's actually cumulative information from not only the Public Works employees, but police and fire all contributed, and we put all our known thoughts together and tried to recreate what happened. Some of those problem areas happened at different times during the day, but over the course of the entire event, those were all the affected areas. I did not want to mislead and have a lot of color on there. There are some wet detention basins that are detention basins in the first place, and I didn't want that to look like that was a big flood. So where the detention basins were full or beyond full or exceeding their capacity, I kind of just outlined them so that it didn't look like it was a big massive flood. It was just a new perimeter. If I can go quickly through that, I'm just going to highlight some areas very fast and get through it. Again, just starting at the north side of town, we had some very large events. Some of them were across community, like with the Village of Oak Brook and 35th Street, and other places where we had detention areas where they are designed to take water, but they connected with other ones, and we had bigger masses of water that isn't normal. This is the 40th and Lincoln area by Cass Avenue. It is not unusual for that intersection to be inundated, but in this particular case, this mass of water went all the way to Grant Street and throughout all these backyards of all these homes on Cass Avenue, which are significantly lower than the road, but still for a section that has reoccurring problems, this was again bigger than anything that we've experienced in there before. It did draw a large response from DuPage County Public Works as well. Was out there for a few days working on this area. It's not uncommon to hear that in any storm that someone is like, that's never ever happened before. And for the first time for me, there were a couple locations that did occur that way, particularly up in Indian Trails where I've never seen water standing on the pavement there. It was down in a few hours, but it was still all kind of new events. Moving down into the middle of town, this is now south of Ogden Avenue. There is a detention basin here, but this is Park Street, and there was a lot of connected water, and if you can familiarize yourself with landmarks, this is the Suburbanite Bowl. And this was all one continuous sheet of water across all this, even blocking Washington Street, where the traffic had to barely drive through there to get to the traffic signal. A lot of people were, turning around and avoiding it as usual. Warwick, we all know, with the way how it can easily flood, but in this particular case, the size of the pond was so big that for me it actually came up and grew. It was touching Melrose, the pavement up there. That's how far up the road closed barricade was, and more severe than usual. By Manning School, this home it does have many occasions where water builds up on the street and floods onto the property, but in this one, it was totally surrounded the parcel, and the house was encapsulated in water, and some of our other usual low-lying suspects pretty much in the flooding in the street until the sewers had capacity to go down. Now south of the tracks, there was a very large, this detention basin does fill and spill out, and I've just kind of drawn some information into the Village of Clarendon Hills. This doesn't do it justice because all this water was really way out into the far down Burlington. I didn't spend much time going down there, but I heard it from them afterwards about the size of that extent. This is the whole St. Joseph's Creek watershed. Looking at Park and 55th, there's reoccurring problems with water that can get very high in the alley and make that impassable and threaten the structures that are around it. This particular day, this was all flooded and across 55th Street and connected all into the Twin Lakes Woods in there. It was one big puddle. Going back to that rainfall graph, after we had that second spike in the morning, there were many road closures that you don't see at all, or very, very rarely. One was back up on Ogden Avenue. I could put that page back up there, but up by Suburbanite, the curb lines were so full that it was single lane. Actually, people were fighting to see who could get closer to the center, to pass through that puddle. 55th Street was closed in 3 places. Here at Park, down closer between Victor and Cumner and Downers Grove, and then if you know where Barth Pond is on 55th Street, it was closed down here, and that would be the other end of what was going on in here. So this is a Downers Grove subdivision, and this is our Deer Creek subdivision, and all of this filled up, and it is the tributary area, but that all overtopped and was feeding all of this. King Arthur Court, the whole St. Joseph's Creek alignment coming down into Twin Lakes Park, which was one lake park on that day. Not only was it one big combined lake, but it was connected with the pond on the other side of 59th Street too. And this begins all of the mapped floodplain to the south. I should watch the monitor when I'm pointing this. Make sure I get it on there. So this all came through, and this was all one continuous floodway. The other road closure that occurred not only at down on 63rd Street by Western. Yeah, on Western, there was actually a vehicle that was trapped in there, and the water traveling in a northbound direction here filled up this Muddy Waters pond and was crossing 63rd Street at a high enough depth and a fast enough speed that was impassable for many hours on that morning as well. So that's there's a lot here, and some of them are known, but even the typical ones had features that we don't normally see in other thunderstorm size event. I already described what we went through on those few days with reusing the pumps. I don't know if I have to get into that anymore. Another representation of we made the map to kind of just demonstrate the village-wide aspect of this. FEMA did have when they came in and they were doing the assessment, or they were trying to do the assessment to determine whether or not it could be declared a federal disaster, there was a large campaign to try and get as many individuals as possible who were affected to fill out it's called an individual assessment form by FEMA, and we set up an online version IT did, and allowed people to submit online so that we can collect as much information as possible with that. I'm not trying to, identify anybody's personal information, but we made this map just to demonstrate, the village-wide aspect of how many people responded with their individual assessment, just on the online version that we collected, at the village and submitted. So we prepared that, and just to get an idea how the concentrations were, and then when you see anything's bulked together, it's kind of clues as to, areas to pay attention to for us. The last time we met like this regarding stormwater was back in after the storms we had, and it was actually the winter of 2008, December, into I don't want to call it spring, it was still winter in 2009, and there was a public input forum like this as well, and from that meeting we retained a consultant to do a village-wide stormwater study for the entire municipality. They not only, the areas that staff know of and that we deal with all the time, but also there was a big outreach to the residential base, and anybody who wanted to participate were invited to fill out surveys, and they were looked at as well by the consultant. Many times it was, it's from something as simple as rear yard drainage, regrading, or doing something in the backyard, to big comprehensive projects that inspired other looks in different areas, especially like Warwick was one area where after doing the village-wide study, we kind of warranted a higher level of attention and get more detailed look in that area. In that report, it's a very thick report and there's a lot of attachment. There's a narrative section where you can follow along. I recreated a table of recommendations. It's a table, I prepared it the same way it appears in the report, just so it was recognizable for anybody that's familiar with that. And this is table 9 in the report, but it's called the unranked summary of projects. And this was kind of a listing of all things that were, this isn't inclusive because there were hundreds and hundreds of surveys and there were a lot of individual looks, but these were places where very generalistic recommendations could be made in the different areas, and they're not sorted by any thing. There's 4 different watersheds that affect our town, so they were just all bulked together in this report. You can see it's separated between public and private recommendations. In different pages on the report, it would tell you what types of areas to be looking into. Many of the private ones might fall into the category of residential flood proofing, just a general, nothing specific to do, but anything that required public improvements were categorized out, and the different type of project, how many structures would be benefited from an improvement if land acquisition was required, and what kind of time it would take to implement. So with those types of parameters, the projects were ranked, and I'll explain the coloring in a second, but I don't have the private one, but the public projects that we would deal with, this is using those other criteria, we're ranked in kind of order of priority, and we've been working towards as best we can from the top to the bottom, and certainly the ones that are very quick to implement. And I'm going to describe some of these because it's hard to read on the overhead. But do you think I should go through project by project? You would?
Maybe we'll come back to that.
Okay. Well, the projects that were, just very generally, we can come back and describe them in more detail. The green is where we've already done work or we're not doing work. I left one out here blank, even though we've done some of the improvement in there. We're not finished doing it. This one's Richmond and Grant. And other ones that are in yellow would be ones that are storm sewer extensions to make a storm sewer accessible to somebody who wanted to do a private improvement. So these we weren't considering until somebody was prepared to do the other portion of the investment. We would use these resources somewhere else where we can. And in one case, like north on Oakwood Drive, we did do the storm sewer extension, and the homeowner has made good use of it and made a connection. So I added all those up, and the ones that are marked in red, I should describe. 2 of them I've marked as Downers Grove. It's not that there are improvements that where the improvement that was recommended would only benefit the downstream portion of that is not in our municipality. It's not saying that they're not worthy projects, it's just someone else's jurisdiction. And in the case of Downers Grove and the Deer Creek, we have been talking with them after this storm. This is the report from 4 years ago. From this storm, we were meeting with them before the storm ever came up. There was a lot of coincidences that came with the timing of the storm on things that we were working on, both the flood insurance rate maps and things like that as well. So adding stuff up, the stuff in the white are not only unfinished, but we're at the point where the types of projects that we can do in-house and the maintenance we have done. Some of them is ongoing and reoccurring. Sorry, I'm describing them anyway, but, like Muddy Waters Pond, it's a lot of going back and a lot of ongoing checking and maintenance and doing things, and we're doing stuff cooperatively with the Park District. In Black Hawk Drive, there's certain things that we do inspection, 55th and Park. There's a certain routine of sewers that are looked at always when you are expecting a storm. So that's where we're at with that. Is that a good place to stop?
I want to thank Steve for supplying all that information. The reality is Steve could probably go on a couple more hours with many, many details about everything that we've done as well as things that we could do. But we definitely want to provide enough time for everyone who wants to speak tonight to get up here. For the open forum, we're going to run it the way that we always do, 3 minutes per person. We have a timer here just to assist with that because we need to be respectful of everyone's time and we want to give everyone a chance to speak. So we're going to hold to the 3 minutes, and I believe it's 30 seconds prior to the end of the 3 minutes, the yellow light will go off, so it'll just be a cue for whoever's speaking to know that it's time to wrap it up. And once it hits red, shortly after that, I'll ask for that to end. It does not mean that your comments will be silenced at that moment. If there's more conversation that you need to have with elected officials or staff, we will do that after the meeting. We will do that at future meetings. We will do that as often as we need to make sure that we hear everything that you have to say so they can be part of the record and part of how we go forward in addressing these problems. Once again, This is the open forum request form. If you're going to speak, you do need to fill this out. There's more forms out there. I have some here as well. And a couple other items before we jump into that. A couple days after the most recent flooding issue, we had something called the initial assessment, in which we worked with the county to have residents fill out a form online, and that actually prompted the FEMA funds that were released. We want to make sure that everyone knows that if you filled out that form, you still need to fill out this form. The form that they're filling out in the back room right now for federal assistance, that's a completely different form. So if you filled out that online form a couple days within a week of that flood, that has nothing to do with applying for grant funds currently. So you want to make sure that you do that. We want to make sure that that's clear. And once again, when you come up, state your name and your address clearly, and we'll go from there. All right. Let's see.
I just wanted to add,
Yes.
with the name and address was a good point. We're taking notes too. This is being recorded so that we've got access to it, but it's important to know who you are and where you're from. And we'll be trying to, as you're identifying your address and describing your situation, they're going to try and pull it up on the map as well so everybody can follow along with your location. Right.
Thank you. And once again, it's 3 minutes, and if you have any questions to ask, feel free to ask those. However, we'll answer all questions at the end of open forum, just to avoid redundancy and such. So the first person is Ken Newton of 10 West Traube.
Repeating, my name is Ken Newton. I live at 10 West Traube, or Traub. That's the home that's directly west of the police fire department. And since the construction of that police fire department, we've had flooded basements and land. Questions for me is that when that facility was built, in conjunction with the library, the structural engineer, architect, on-site engineer was in contact with me almost daily, because that's a facility that's about 5 feet higher than our home. And he assured me, never in writing, but he verbally assured me that he was going to provide enough retention, containment, so that we would never receive a cup of water in our basement. Well, on at least 4 different occasions, we received 2 feet of water. And we are now serving as the stormwater containment detention area. I asked Mr. May, we visited a couple of weeks ago, how the pond that's north of us, what's its function? Is it large enough? And what do the pumps do to evacuate the water from there? I'm disappointed that the village hasn't taken some sort of action to alleviate the problem we have. The loss is just, it's more than material. It's a 8, 9, 10-day cleanup, and of course, in most cases, a loss of a lot of family artifacts. I don't know if I'm going to get any answers today, but that's my statement, that's my issue. I can verify all my flooding results by either my own personal pictures that were taken or issues that show our home underwater. In closing, I know there were people on North Grant Street, I believe, that were far worse impacted than we were. I thank you for hearing my case.
Thank you. Next, we have Jane Chevchuk of 12 West Traube. She might be in another room, so we'll wait a moment. Once again, Jane Chevchuk.
Maybe she's being interviewed.
She's having her form filled out.
You can go back to it.
She might be in there.
All right, we'll try Bruce Peterson, 205 North Lincoln.
Here it comes.
What did he say? 205 North Lincoln. Here he
He's
comes.
coming. He's coming.
Larry, you may want to announce the on-deck hitter, the on-deck person, so they can be ready.
That's true. Thank you. Next person would be Duncan Janet, 319 North Warwick, but this is Bruce, 205 North Lincoln.
Lincoln. May I have my question, please? I'll read it. Oh, sure. I'll read it as I wrote. My name is Bruce Peterson. I live at 205 North Lincoln, 2 blocks north of here. We have a bungalow with a basement. We have a toilet in the basement. We've lived here for about 12 years. Even with the very heavy rains in prior years, we only got a trickle in a couple of corners. This time, we had 25 inches. The real problem was that the water was not just clear water or dirt. We had sewer water. We had feces, or whatever the proper word is, floating in our basement. I have a gallon bottle of the water that's black as mud. My question is, well, at about 3:30 in the morning, I know what was happening with the rain. Then I know there was another burst around 6:30. So we watched the water coming up out of our toilet. And suddenly, at about 11 o'clock, Cass was cleared, Lincoln was cleared. It was like somebody pulled a plug. And so my question is, and I heard the discussion about the retention ponds, I understand that, but was there a crossover of storm sewer water into the sanitary system that caused the backup? And it wasn't just my house. There were others, any others on Lincoln and I think Grant, who have either a shower or a toilet in the basement, had raw sewage coming out of the toilet or sewer. So that is my question is, how did the two systems cross? And two, what can you do to prevent it in the future?
Thank you. And we do have folks here from the sanitary district, so we will get to that in a moment. Next is Janet Duncan, 319 North Warwick, and the person after that, Lawrence and Gail Gress from 339 South Park.
Hello, Janet Duncan, 319 North Warwick. I don't know if that's going to... Glossy, sorry. Well, that's what it should be, right here. That's what it was. So, yeah, I was stranded. It was pretty panicky. But, yeah, it seems to be repeatedly on 300 and 400, especially 400 Warwick. And my question was about where the storm water is going. We were here before about the uphill at Traube, between Melrose and Traube. There's an obvious huge dip in the property at the 400, middle of the 400 block, and we just really want to know from Flag Creek, we believe it's Flag Creek that's our stormwater, how the water is connected, how it's supposed to be sent up. On the day that it was receding everywhere else, it didn't recede. until Saturday, or I'm sorry, Friday evening. So from Wednesday night to Friday evening, I was stranded in my house, but it did not recede. Actually, it came up higher during Friday. So we're just questioning on Warwick where that stormwater is being sent and if there's going to be any improvements made from constantly having our road closed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lawrence and Gail Gress from 339 South Park, and after them, Kim from 56th Street, Downers Grove.
Thank you, Larry. Mayor, council, distinguished guests, elected officials, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this evening. This is a recurring issue for my property at 339 Park. This picture is a picture of my property on the corner of Park and 55th. Most of the village staff is very familiar with me and the property location because of what is a recurring problem. I wish I had a basement to pump water out of. I've spent thousands of dollars over the years. We put in a backup sewer system so that we didn't have the sewer backup like this other gentleman did. For thousands of dollars of our own personal expense. The first flood we had was in 06, October 2nd, that Monday. Terrible flood, 10 inches in a matter of minutes. January 9th, Ron Searle and I stood in my garage with my attorney and looked at the flood damage that was there from that flood that Larry had spoken to, or I should say Steve had spoken to earlier. But the issue that I have here with respect to the property itself is the fact that my property is a retention pond. Unfortunately, there's a house in the middle of the retention pond. And what we'd like to see happen is the home eradicated, get my money out of the house, and let the retention pond be the retention pond that it is. The property itself is in the bottom of a bowl. I have pictures here for the village. I have a CD that I'd like you to take a look at. This is for you to keep. This last event was so catastrophic. My wife and I were given the alarm call from my daughter who lives in the home and frantically called us. The home was completely underwater. The water came in from the garage, through the back door, through the front door, and there was no escaping it. The fire department looked out from across the street after we notified them, couldn't even get to us. The whole house was completely devastated, and this is the second time this has happened. We are still not back in our home. My home is still under construction today as I stand here before you. I don't have any kitchen cabinets yet back in my house. We've finally got the flooring back in, but the house was completely underwater. I mean, I would happily take a basement that I could pump water out of if I had one. But as Steve has said, if you have an ability to pump water, you have to have a place to pump it to. In my case, I can't do that. My home is on a slab. There's no place for the water to go except in the front door, in the back door, through the garage, and I'm at the bottom of Lake Gress at the corner of Park and 55th Street. And if you've lost a family member, many of us have, I see from the gray hair in the audience, most of us have lost a family member at one time. I've lost my home 3 times now, and I cannot tell you how deeply that has affected me and my wife, especially this last one, to the point of complete mental inability to operate for many, many days after this because it was such a devastating blow to us and our family. And I really need help here. We've gone through this, and I've passed my time, but we've had the studies, the consultants have been through. There's 50 consultants in the room here tonight that could give you advice on what to do. But we really need help, and I beseech all of you to really pay close attention to this property in particular, because it is one that is not going to have any resolution here unless something is drastically done to the property itself. Thank you very much.
Nicely done.
Thank you very much for your comments. And I do understand this is extremely emotional for all of us who have been through these types of devastating things. We want to try to stick to the 3 minutes, and so I just wanted to reiterate that real quickly. Next, we have Kim from 228 56th Street, and the next person after that will be Kirk from 4000 North Lincoln. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kim Dewinski, and I live at 228 56th Street in Downers Grove. As a resident of the Deer Creek subdivision, April 18th was the latest of a long line of severely significant flooding events. All roads in and around the subdivision were flooded. While there was a good amount of rainfall, there was also sufficient warning that this event was coming to the area. The main issue causing our problem is the excessive amount of water that was flowed into the subdivision from the ill-maintained berms surrounding the north end of the retention area south of White Fawn Trail and west of the golf course. This quickly raised the water levels in the subdivision, causing large amounts of damage. We are aware and have been told previously this area is within the Westmont boundaries, that some of this damage is in the excess of 7 feet of water in people's basements. This has not been the first time for an event of this magnitude to impact the homes of Deer Creek, and will not be the last unless steps are taken to prevent this from happening again. We as a group have a list of questions and concerns that we'd like the Village of Westmont to address. This will provide us direction needed to be taken to reduce the risk of damage to the homes and lives of the residents of Deer Creek. This is not a question of if we will experience a flooding or severe event again. It is just a matter of time when, and it's in the minds of the 150 homeowners of the subdivision. There is an urgency to address the issue of this area, as each rain is a flooding risk. And we have been informed by a committee, we have formed a committee that is willing to work with the Village of Westmont and the Village of Downers Grove on these concerns. We believe the flooding events can be prevented. I have free review, detailed information regarding our concerns, as well as a flash drive with over 130 photos. We'll be more than willing to meet with the members of the Village of Westmont to discuss these issues further and help develop a plans as necessary. The residents of Deer Creek have lived with this problem in the area long enough. Action needs to be taken to ensure that we are able to enjoy the quality of life we have come to expect. Thank you on the behalf of the residents of Downers Grove.
Next, we have Kirk from 4000 North Lincoln, and after that, it'll be Mary Critchlow from 136 North Washington.
Yes, my name is Kirk Koeniger. I live at 4000 North Lincoln Street. It's considered Westmont, but it's actually Township of Downers Grove. This is pretty sad. I've been flooded 6 times since 1997. 8 to 10 feet of water 3 times. My wife's been crying many a times. I mean, it's very sad. I'm just wondering what they're going to do to resolve this problem. They come out there, they got little pumps. But they got pumps as big as your house out there. There's probably 2 pumps as big as your house, and they expect to pump the water. And last time I went to a meeting, one of the engineers told me, hey, you're not an engineer. I don't care about you. That's exactly what he told me. And I'm just wondering why they can't put a bigger pump in there or a generator there, because the power goes out a lot, and why they couldn't put a bigger pump and pump it up to Cass Avenue. I think Cass Avenue could handle the water up there. We got 2 small pipes there. We got 36-inch pipes there. You probably need a 5 or 6 foot pipe underground to handle the water. So that's what I'm asking, why they can't do that.
Next, we have Mary Critchlow from 136 North Washington, and after that, going back to see if Jane is here from 12 West Traube.
Good evening. I'm Mary Critchlow. I live at Washington and just south of Norfolk. I had 3.5 feet of water in my lower level. My house was built in 1925, and until 2007, there was never any water in that house. The lower level was finished by the lady who lived there from 1925 until 1993. So I had 90-year-old wood floors down there and walls. She used it as a studio. I had 4 pumps running during this incident. We had 2 feet of water in the backyard and about 2.5 feet of water in the garage. One of the big problems was our alley is gravel, as most of them are. But on Monday, the village was out and poured more gravel at the Irving Park end of the alley, and then the water came. My garage is 1.5 feet lower than the alley. When the garage was built, it was even. So they keep putting more and more dirt, gravel on and not tearing it down. We also had sanitary came out. Our hole in the manhole in the alley was under about 1 foot of gravel before he came out and emptied it, so nothing was going there. I know on the streets the guys were out poking holes all the time, so that was good. But I have lost, my furnace was up 1 foot off the water, off the ground. I've lost all my appliances. I do a lot of sewing. I've lost all my sewing machines, all my fabric, all my yarn. We've had to tear apart the basement, and I'm afraid to put it back together. We're talking now about digging down around the outside of the house and putting that black permaseal stuff. But, my thought is we should put a berm out at the alley and around the house and a moat, because it's gotten terrible. We had a little house that was next door to us, and that was torn down, and one of the big giant 4,000 square feet houses was put there with 9-foot basements. That's when my flooding started. That house is about 1 foot higher than my house is. And I don't understand how that can be done. My house was basically one of the first houses in town, the first houses on Washington. And how can people come in and build and get approval for building something that's higher than where my house is, than where the ground level is? I don't get it. All righty, thank you.
Thank you. Jane from 12 West Trobby, and after that will be Dave from 216 61st Street.
Hi, Jane Shevchuk, 12 West Trobby. We live behind the retention pond, and those pumps were not operating, so the pond was full from all the rain previous to the major rain. And I just need to know, whose job is it to maintain that retention pond pump so that that water gets pumped out and that pond is empty? And then also, why was the sanitary sewer shut off? I had sewage back up, and I was told that the sanitary sewage line was shut off at some point because of all the rain. And that's all I have to say.
Next we have Dave from 216 61st Street, and after that will be Karen Eisenberg from 116 Trobby.
I'm not sure. Larry, could you say that again? What address?
Hello, Dave from 216 61st Street.
Okay.
And this is regarding more the retention pond by 216. I don't know if we can get a visual of that. But we just had this area here. This is going north, and this retention pond is right by Eagle Creek Apartments over here. We live this way. This takes on a lot of water from all of this, the apartments, the homes in this area, and then the water flows to the north. But we were just involved. Steve put together a cleanup, and this area collects a lot of different debris from the surrounding area. At one point, this used to be a really nice little pond lake. This was like 10, 15 years ago. And this kind of what it looks like today. Well, if you can see, on a dry day, not like with all the problems that we've had with all the rain, but this is kind of what it looks like when there's not much water there. It just turns into a pond/cesspool. It really is stagnant. And there's a culvert that was installed when the old one collapsed, and it was lowered, which constantly drains the water. Years ago, this is what it used to look like when there would be a little bit of water. There would be more of kind of a lake, and it would collect and keep more water, which I think would help the surrounding properties a lot more. So basically, my thoughts are, and this is just with the village and the infrastructure, is in beautification of that, the pond retention is to lower the culvert and make it more wetland area. There might be other features that could benefit it, which would be federal dollars or state dollars that could help. But that's it. And the problems that Westmont has incurred with the flooding, there's many, and this is a small one, but I think it's a small solution to help with the retention issues. Thanks.
And next, we have Karen Eisenberg from 116 West Traube. And after that, we'll have Pat Mansky, 3906 North Adams.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Karen Eisenberg, 116 West Traube. This is the second time we've been flooded in 4 years. This was definitely worse than the first time, but both times there's been property lost. This time we had to actually remove walls. We have, all of our neighbours have a, just figured out what it's called, a culvert, the pipe with that goes underneath and the land goes over the top, so all the water goes in that, and then I guess is directed away from the properties. What we have at the end of our driveway is a sewer cap. And I don't know why, but someone said it gets turned off. I don't know if it does, but the water that has flooded us basically comes from that sewer cap. And it's got nowhere to go because it's right at the end of our driveway and it comes straight down into our property. So the last time we got 2 feet of water, and now every time it rains, I'm awake in the middle of the night waiting for, flooding. I'm sure it's going to happen again. I'm not quite sure why, and I guess maybe that's my question, is why we have it there and other people don't. It seems like a really crazy place to put it, especially when the water's got nowhere to go except in our house. And what we'd like is for it to be gone and to have what our neighbours have, to have the water directed away from our house. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Pat Mansky, 3906 North Adams, followed by Pete Kramer, 259 North Linden.
My name is Pat Mansky, live on 3906 North Adams Street. It's actually Liberty Park, the unincorporated area. But it's one of those things that where we're on private wells, and we do back up to the Indian Trails subdivision, which their retention pond, when it overflows into us. So not only do we have our own water issues, we end up getting the overflow water from the Indian Trails subdivision. And then there's last flood, not only do we had the rainwater, but we actually filled up from the inside of the house out from the toilet and everything else. And due to being on a private well, health department is slowly just now passing some of our wells. My well just got approval yesterday that it finally passed not having E. coli and coliform bacteria. I still have other neighbors that still don't have usable water in that area. We do have a retention pond at the end there that is an ongoing issue. They keep on telling you, oh, it's the 100-year storm, but we flooded 2008, 2009, 2010. We had some issues in 2012 and just this most recent one. Where I'm at there, I had water all the way up to the house to the south of me, going all the way both east and west sides of the street. That entire retention pond was totally underwater. Basement, garage, I had 4.5 feet of water in my backyard. And it's one of those things, yeah, we are unincorporated area, but we don't really seem to get any assistance from anybody. When there's water on the pavement, we do have county out there. They do their best to try to pump, but there's never any place for water to go. We've been told numerous times that the storm sewers in our area are undersized, but it also goes in that our storm sewers have to go to the village of Westmont to get out of our area. So is it something that the village has to work with county to try to help us out and everything else? Because not only we have issues with the flooding, we also had issues with non-usable water. So that's all I really have.
Next, Pete Kramer from 259 North Linden, followed by Dave Wisbrock, 325 North Warwick.
Hello. As Mr. McIntyre stated, my name is Pete Kramer. I live at 259 North Linden. My wife and I have lived there for 3 years now, and we have flooded 2 times. our basement. Once in 2010, where we received about 6 inches of water, and just this past time, where we received 26 inches of water, just after I newly finished the basement with carpet and, just poor timing. I've written numerous emails to Kim Nickel on the storm sewer that's at the end of the alley between Warwick and Linden. I've been very concerned about every time we get a sudden downpour. In fact, last night and the night before, I get 6 inches of water in my backyard. I can show a picture here. This is my backyard the Thursday morning of the flood. That's 3.5 feet of water there. That's not uncommon for me to get. Basically, it's at the bottom of a hill. The alley, the storm sewer fills up. There's mulch that backs up and covers the storm sewer, and it has no place to go, so it chooses my backyard. What I was worried about in the past, and why I've written the emails and discussed this, is I was worried about it coming into my house, and this time it did. So it's frustrating to, every time we get a downpour, to have garbage, mulch, gravel fill my backyard. Now this time, because of the flood in April, where we hadn't really received any flowers or anything, I now have dandelions, weeds, daylilies that I've never had before in the years. So I'd just like to see some sort of answers, because my neighbor didn't flood. It's very tough to, every time we get a sudden downpour, like Ms. Eisenberg said, I can't sleep. I wake up in the middle of the night. Last night was one of it. And I've got 2 pumps, too. So I appreciate everyone taking your time to listen.
Next, we have Dave Wisbrock from 325 North Warwick, followed by Ken from 32 West 61st Street.
Hi, everyone. Dave Wisbrock, 325 North Warwick. Seems like this is a regular thing here. 2006, we had 2.63 inches of water and nothing happened at my house. 2008, 1.09 inches after Chicago Avenue was finished and my house was destroyed. And for 2 years, my house flooded nonstop. Before the flooding, Chicago Bears came out and did a photo shoot of my house, and it was a pretty nice basement, quite a bit of memorabilia in there, and that was in their catalog. And today, it's here's some pictures of what it is today. After 2 years of flooding and being up, I understand what the people are going through that don't sleep, because I went through it for over 2 years, and I spent over $10,000 doing a drainage system around my entire house, and it's worked for 2 years. So for 2 years I flooded, and now for 2 years I've been good up until this storm, and now the water's coming back in. So no matter what I do, it doesn't matter how much I spend. Insurance doesn't care. I truly believe this village really does not care. Especially our planning and zoning committee, since when we had a meeting about this, and they laughed at us and made jokes. Not everyone, but most of the people on there actually made jokes about the flooding and our houses being destroyed, and I find that absolutely disgusting. Come live on my street where you got a porta-john floating down the street. That's not fun. This is what our village allows. That's in the middle of the worst part of the flood. They're building a big house. And there was supposedly a moratorium to protect us. It's obviously not working very well. It's not doing anything. Come live on my street where there's a porta-john floating down there. Walk your kid down my street. The people that like to make jokes about it, it's disgusting. This is what we keep going. Here's the nice foundation for that new house. I can't wait to show the new owners when they actually buy it. Welcome to Warwick, Lake Warwick. This lake, or this street, this is about at least 700 feet by 300 feet lake. That's our street. It gets about 8 feet deep in the middle, right where they're building the house, where the porta-john floats. So the kids get to have fun, go boating. The cars drive through and splash our houses. I really think the village should supply no wake zone signs down that whole street for us, so I don't have to buy them again. You know, because when people drive down, it's not funny. When people drive down our street, our houses get destroyed. Water goes into our houses. It's not funny at all. It's disgusting. You know, and the Planning and Zoning Committee that makes jokes about this isn't funny. You come live in my house for a day. Spend one night there in a storm. See how you like it. You know, I got over 200 pictures here from all the last 4 or 5 years. I've had board members come out and see it. I've heard everybody say for years now it takes time. How much time does it take? I hope that now that we have new board members, you guys can help step up and help us. I mean, this is horrible. You know, this is a problem that's been ongoing, and no one's done nothing to help us. We had a moratorium that doesn't work. You know, what is the moratorium good for? Absolutely nothing. If you're going to build a house where there's porta-johns floating down my street, you know, I'm disgusted, you know, especially after the money I spent on this place. You know, I spent over $10,000 trying to solve my drainage problems. And I was lucky, you know, I only had about an inch of water this time, but that's after $10,000, 3 sump pumps, and how many sleepless nights, I don't know. I don't know. I know I'm over my 3 minutes, so I'll shut up, but that's all I got.
Thank you. Next we have Ken from 32 West 61st Street.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Ken Nemec. I live at 32 West 61st Street. I've lived there for like 37 years. That pond just south of 61st Street used to be 3-4 feet deep. I used to fish there with my children. But come summertime, that creek, St. Joseph Creek, used to dry up bone dry. Now, throughout these past 20 years, it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. In the old days, my driveway used to be gravel. It used to wash away every time we had a heavy rain, because I've been through the village, and this is, again, prior to all of you here. My driveway being gravel used to wash away. Westmont used to come out and fill it in every time. They'd shovel the gravel off my front lawn and put it back in the driveway. They actually put a culvert in. You put a sewer in with the culvert so that when the water overflows the street, it'll go down and then through, which I don't quite understand how that worked. But it just, throughout the years, the water is getting worse and worse and worse from where more and more water is being put into that area. And this last time, luckily we didn't lose power. So, I mean, I will say thankful for that. I have a generator, a big generator that I put up, and it just keeps running day and night. As long as I don't lose power, I can stay ahead of the game and shop vacs, and I didn't lose too much this time. Only had a half, 3/4 of an inch of water down there, but nevertheless, it's, again, like everybody else, sleepless nights. You're out there mopping, trying to get something done. But right now, my driveway, I had my driveway asphalted a couple of years ago. Now the whole thing's undermined and being washed away. I had railroad ties that I had pinned together, 3-4 tall, pinned together with rebar. Those are gone. I don't know where they ended up at, in which town, which city, I don't know. But they're all gone, and my whole driveway that I spent $10,000 to have asphalted so I didn't get it washed away, that's all been undermined too. So I hope that the board here now, again, with all new face, I hope we get somewhere. The back of my property, I know Kim Nichols been involved with that. They put big new homes behind me. They put a detention pond over there. I never had water in my backyard, but now I got water running through the front, and I'm on a septic system now. So my septic gets flooded. Westmont's been out. They look at this and go, sorry. Why is it my problem? They released the bond back to the owners built the house. Why was it released? They never came and talked to me. When they finally came and looked at it and they did elevation, I go, oh, the elevation's changed. Well, yeah, the survey's been done 40 years ago. Things get eroded. So I've got to deal with that, extra cost and everything else to try to take care of all that issues. I put all my downspouts and I put my water down so I don't end up with it. So. Like a lot of us here, we're putting a lot of money in our own homes and we take pride in our homes, but we're just looking for some help from the community. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We still have time for open forum, but that was the last request form that I received. I'm going to ask Trustee Scott to read into the record a submission that we received from Oakwood.
It's to the Village Board on behalf of the Oakwood Homeowners Association, representing 457 homes within the Village of Westmont. I would first like to thank the village for holding this meeting and also for requesting feedback from the OHA regarding flooding and power loss resulting from the storm on April 18th. The OHA was able to make an effort to reach out to our membership through our Facebook page, asking that our residents reply back to us to let us know whether they lost power and/or took on any water in their homes. But we had very minimal feedback. We do know that the majority of Oakwood subdivision was without power for anywhere between 4 and 10 hours, and there was a large number of residents that had flooding. But we do not have any metrics to communicate this at this time. If useful, we would be more than happy to attempt to gather more data through additional means in the upcoming weeks. While I regret I could not be here tonight, I again appreciate the village's efforts to reach out to us to gather this information, and this was from Matt Johnson, the president of the OHA.
I'll also quickly paraphrase another submission that we received from residents at address 508 North Blackhawk, and the reason I won't go into detail because it's basically all complimentary of a village staff assisting them with the problems during this recent flooding. I do know that the same address was here 4 years ago when we had the previous meeting and had a number of great concerns, but apparently during this most recent event, things were better for them. Anyone else for open forum? Yes.
I just would like to say...
Please come to the microphone. And you've already signed in?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
When I signed up online for FEMA, as soon as we were approved, the FEMA people were at my house within 12 hours and then followed up 24 hours later. So I really want to compliment FEMA for what they've done. Of course, they didn't give me anything much in the way of money, but that's another issue. But they were very receptive to my concerns. I just wanted to say that about FEMA. It's nice to hear.
Thank you. You can just fill out the form if you would.
Hi, good evening. I'm Jim Burke. I live at 139 North Linden, and I've been living there for 23 years. And repeatedly, my backyard floods. Every single time we get 1 inch of rain. It goes down a lot, it goes down very fast, but it's constantly going into our backyard. There's a park right across from us, Manning School. Nothing ever goes there. You can play basketball on the big rain. There's a basketball court there. You can play basketball in it while my house is underwater. I was wondering, if anything could be done with that. It seems like Manning School dumps all their water right onto the streets. So does LaSalle Bank of America. They don't retain any of their water. There's no incentive to do anything such as rain barrels, which may help, may not. And I don't know if this TIF fund is going to be any good in the future for the business area and that. And if you could please address that for me, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
If there's anyone else for open forum would like for them to step forward at this time, if not, we'll move on through the rest of the agenda. Yes.
I just had a question. Everyone's been asking questions and saying what the situation is.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen with this meeting? Is it just for your information, or are people going to be contacted? Are people going
Sure.
to get minutes from this meeting? What's going to happen from there?
Actually, that's a good segue. We have probably a couple more reports, and then we'll start talking about how we proceed in the future and answering questions. Thank you. Next, we have our I'm sorry. Thank you. Excuse me? You want to speak under open forum? Please, come forward. Fill out the form if you would.
I'll read it out. Yes, hello everybody. I'm living by address 200 West Chicago. My house was flooded numerous of times. At this time, my house got 3 feet of standing surface water in the main level. Maybe village is using my house as a pond, I don't know. Perhaps. I have new pictures. But this is the picture, if you don't mind, help me please. So I do not have a basement. That's the way house is built. Hello. You know me. So this is 3 feet of water that was coming through the windows, through the door. How do you like that? Well, let me mention. Master bedroom, living room, dining room, kitchen, 2 restrooms, utility room, laundry room. You didn't mention that. Kitchen, right? No garage. Oops. So, that's a tremendous loss. I do have insurance. I have flood insurance. The representative of flood insurance said that, well, you lost about $80,000. My house is insured only up to 20. They insured up to 30 at maximum. So I lost my tenants, definitely, and I still have to finish the school. These 3 kids and woman. The woman was sleeping in the master bedroom. Now, what happened during the night? Rain happened, dogs started barking. That's how she waked up. Then she had to run over the water when the level of water was reaching the receptacles. She could be easily dead. I'm not talking about a little flat in the garage or somewhere else. I'm talking about life. House can be rebuilt. And that is not a problem. Then I brought my issue here in City Hall, asking, is it possible to turn this roof down and build the house upper? The response was, now you're supposed to be careful and you're responsible. What you gotta do is the standing water. Now it's my responsibility. Am I right or am I wrong? Noel, right? Your name. Am I right or I am wrong?
We won't.
You know, how is supposed to deal with this property? If this is the pond, well, then this is the pond. It's not living property. If this is the living property, then I want to ask what had been done over this period of time. I have another pictures of another flood. Please, go ahead, please. Run these pictures. This is what is inside. Next.
Yeah.
Please. That's as much water we got around. What is that I'm supposed to do? And city is telling me, you know what, we cannot put any kind of improvement because we are short on money. I understand. I do understand that issue. Okay, but at the same time, I am not asking too much. If it costs millions and millions of dollars, just buy out my property for whatever market value it has, and done with it. It's got to be like 200 something, okay? Forget about millions and millions of dollars. I mean, tell me what they're supposed to do. I don't know. I am really, you know, every day I am working over there, every day. And today I was working, and yesterday I was working, because, you know, I have people living on the 2nd floor, and the 1st floor, I'm coming and cutting drywall, throwing this to the garbage, and so on, etc. I'm sick and tired, but this is not the first time. This is not the first time. I had people from Section 8 living over there. I have a letter from them, from DuPage County, and they said, you know what, this place is not livable. They are not going to assist you with anything. Oh, by the way, I have it right here.
I need to.
You don't need it, actually. That's another. That's okay. So basically, I cannot rent this property. I cannot live in this property. What is that I can do? No, and the thing is, you know, when I was buying this property, I had attorney, I had paperwork, and it was written, not flooded zone, which means, done deal, good deal. I'm safe. As a matter of fact, I got water up to here, okay, up to my neck. I'm sick and tired of this, you know. So please help. If pipe's supposed to be bigger, well done, pipe's supposed to be bigger. For some reason, I have only 1 ditch. No, I lied to you. 2 ditches around my house. Very inconvenient to cut grass, but it's okay, I can live with this. And the rest of the spots are pretty much smooth. Why don't they cut the dirt? You know, I know, maybe it's not legal. Maybe people won't like it. You know what? But everyone who got flooded in the basement, all this water is drained toward of my property. No matter where you shoot this water is got to go toward of my property. I'm the collector. How nice.
Thank you for
I have
sharing.
bunch of proof of these floods, okay, which happened not today, not yesterday. It happens, you know what? Once you burn yourself because you've been drinking hot water, now you're blowing on the cold water. That's what exactly I'm doing. I'm blowing on the cold water. Anytime we have a rain, you know, I pray to Lord. I mean, this flood is mine.
Thank you. I need to.
You're more than welcome.
So I appreciate it.
Thank you for sharing with me.
We have some folks here from the sanitary district, and I'd like to ask them to come forward and maybe answer some of the questions specific to those types of questions. So.
Sure. Thanks. Thank you, Lauren. I'm Tom O'Connor again from the Flag Creek Water Reclamation District, and you'll hear from Nick Meninga in a couple of minutes. He's from Downers Grove Sanitary District. Just in case you don't understand our jurisdiction, Flag Creek services about half of Westmont, more or less everything east of Cass Avenue. Both of our sanitary districts, but I'll let Nick speak for himself. We're strictly responsible for sanitary sewer flow. No stormwater. We just collect and treat the sanitary sewers from actually 11 different communities up as far as Roosevelt Road down to I-55 over to the county line, and then Cass Avenue and Highland Avenue going north. We designed a sewer system. It started being built back in the 1920s. It's designed again for sanitary sewers, sanitary sewage only. The average dry weather flow is supposed to be 12 million gallons. Typically, we treat about 10 million gallons of flow from this whole service area. It's about a 27 square miles of service area. In this past event that we had, we were doing over 105 million gallons of flow coming into the system at that point in time. It's over 10 times the design capacity of the system. All of our equipment was operating properly. I mean, it's just a natural disaster. I mean, everybody got bombed. I hear these terrible stories. I mean, our facilities, I mean, they're just mechanical facilities. Us, they did its job, but I mean, we lost equipment, and our guys were working around the clock just like these people. So I can just say it was just a catastrophic event. I think that's the most flow we ever took. Flag Creek, which weaves down to the east of our facility, actually overflowed the bank and was flowing into our plant, and our crews were fighting to just keep the equipment and facilities running and not getting swamped out ourselves. It would have been a disaster if we had lost our equipment there. Again, I just want to emphasize we're not responsible for stormwater. A lot of the reason you go from 10 million to 12 million up to 100 million is there are points of infiltration and inflow getting into the system. And what happens is, I know some of the people said, you know, why does a sanitary back up in my basement? We get that question, and it's just because there's so much I&I. An 8-inch pipe is only designed to take so much flow. When the whole system is swamped, I mean, we also have the pictures. A lot of that water is going to find a way to get into the sanitary system, and it just swamps everything out. So even though we're pumping 105 million, more water wants to get in the system than even that. So, I mean, I'd have to say, you know, we did the best we could. It's unfortunate. And we actually, you know, we got 74 complaints from our whole service area of 19,000 accounts. So we got 74 complaints. I believe we had 5 or 6 in Westmont. You know, we addressed them all, and you know, hopefully within a day or maybe even a few hours, we were able to remedy the situation. The water came down. I don't know if this. I want to just elaborate a little bit. You know, just again, I'm going to use this map. I didn't bring anything with me. When we serve the area west or east of Cass Avenue, and there's primarily 3 drainage basins. The central area goes from Chicago down about 55th Street, and that flows through the Bill to clear the building. The system was built back in the 1920s. Is this on? Or can everybody hear me? Okay.
It's for the recording.
Okay. It was built back in the 1920s, and the outlet capacity for that sewer system was about 3 or 4 million gallons. That's the maximum flow that those pipes could take. We had a project
that we completed about 2 years ago, and we added an additional 15 million gallons worth of capacity that could drain out of this area. And that assisted this eastern central section of Westmont. Since then, we've only got a few complaints, but we had since we've completed that facility, the complaints have dropped off even more. This north area, it drains over to the east, ends up, we have a lift station there, spinning wheel interceptor over by Ground Mill, and south of 55th, it works its way south and east on our 59th Street interceptor. I'm just trying to give you a little information on Flag Creek. I know we're kind of, out there somewhere, you pay the bills and so on. Well, the new pump station we just put in, it's right near the Lions Club pool in Clarendon Hills. We went from an 8-inch pipe to relieve this area. We put in a 48-inch pipe that runs to the lift station. As I say, we still have the 3 to 4 million gallon capacity of the old system. We added this 15 million gallon capacity. But just as a point of information, we're regulated by the IEPA. And they do not like wastewater agencies that collect and treat stormwater. So we had to go in and negotiate with the IPA to even build the station because, the system, that 3 to 4 million gallon pipe capacity is adequately sized to treat all the sanitary flow coming from the area. We had problems they call SSO, sanitary sewer overflows or basement backups. So we worked with the IPA and they allowed us to build this additional facility that takes the additional 15 million gallons out. Now, beyond that, you got to go back, and it's sort of an endless chasing. We have 115,000 lineal feet. That's about 20 miles of sewers in the Westmont area. And there's so many points where the flow can get in, whether it's through a manhole, it's through laterals going to homeowners. And in fact, I'll mention, Flag Creek is only responsible for our sewer pipes. The laterals from your homes to our interceptor, that's the responsibility of the homeowners, if people may have been involved with us from time to time. So there's so many lineal feet. As a rule of thumb, for every lineal foot of our sewer, there could be as much as 4 lineal feet of private out there. So there's another 400,000 lineal feet. What's that, about 80 miles of pipe? There's a lot of points where the water can get into our system. And and Nick would probably have comments along the same line. Again, I don't want to speak for him. But, the facilities are there, and it's a point of, what they call I&I, inflow and infiltration. And a woman, I think on North Warwick, Janet, I believe her name was, I'm not trying to pass the buck, but we have really no responsibility for stormwater. No, we don't close. Like I say, all of our, the 105 million gallons, you can imagine, we normally pump 10 million, and now we're doing 105 million. So, we didn't close anything off. We actually did 10 times the normal flow, trying to draw it down.
Does Flag Creek also have a shared expense program similar to Downersville for the backflow valve installation?
We don't. We've talked about it a little bit, and after this event, maybe we'll take a harder look at it.
Is that just a funding issue?
It's a funding issue, it's correct.
And with that,
well, again, sir, it's strictly sanitary sewers. There's two kinds of sewers out there. There's a sanitary sewer, which is just for, and then the storm sewer, which is going to be, and then there's a third type, a combined sewer, which is for both types. We're only supposed to design our collection system for sanitary flow. Our whole system's designed.
But if it's backing up in people's houses, isn't there an issue? This isn't new. I think the reason you guys get little complaints because people know that Flag Creek is pretty useless. I know in '97 when my dad's house got disconnected by mistake and you guys filled his whole house with sanitary, raw sewage, and did nothing about it. 249 North Warwick, 1997, you can look it up. That's why people don't call Flag Creek. It's that useless. You don't help people.
I'm gonna interject real quick because we have other people from public agencies who we'd like to get to and share the mic. That's all right. But thank you so much. That's the Downers Grove Sanitary District. Thank you.
My name is Nick Menninga. I'm the general manager of the Downers Grove Sanitary District. We're the sanitary district that handles all the sewage flow from west of Cass Avenue in Westmont. And as Tom said, we're tasked with collecting sanitary sewage and treating it before we discharge it in the East Branch. The service area in Westmont that we serve, it generally flows by gravity all the way to our treatment plant, which is near 355 and Maple. The flow from Westmont and the sanitary sewage has to flow by gravity all the way there for most of the area that we treat in Westmont. We also have a lift station in the southern part of town, so there is a pump station, so that's kind of the southern extreme portion of town. Everything ran the entire time during this event. We do not turn off our facilities. So if anybody tells you that we're not running, that's just simply not true. Everything ran. And as Tom said, in this big event, everything was underwater, including our sewer system. If you were to build a house today, a new house anywhere in our service area, we would require you to install overhead sewer, what we call overhead sewer. And that's a backflow prevention facility inside your house that would protect your house from a backup. There's a lot of legacy houses that don't have that in their house, okay? Tom and I exchanged ideas on this a little bit before the meeting. We actually have a cost-sharing program at the Downers Grove Sanitary District so that we will help house those legacy houses that don't have backflow prevention. We'll financially help you with installing those devices in your property. We have a program. Actually, we got about 300 calls in the storm that we responded to. Basically what we do triage in this type of event. We go check and see if there's anything we can do. If there's a blockage in a main or something that we can jet, we take care of that. In this particular event, everything was just underwater. We didn't have any blockages. There was not much we could do but wait for it to drain, wait for the pumps to catch up with the water in the system. So that's what we could do. Yeah.
How is it that my sanitary sewer in my alley, which is a foot under gravel, can do anything? It's not anymore. There was a foot of gravel over the sanitary sewer in my alley.
Yeah, we need to, I'll talk to you after. Tell me where that's at.
The guy came out.
Okay, he did come on, we got it clear. Okay, thank you. Everybody who called, we sent them a packet like this. I'm sorry. Everybody who called, we sent them a packet to get involved in our overhead sewer program if they're interested in it. Joe and Mary Lucas, are they here tonight? I was told they were going to be here tonight, and I could deliver a packet for them. This is an application packet to get involved in our overhead sewer program. I brought about a dozen of these, and they're also available on our website. So you're welcome to get involved in our program. And so we want to help you protect yourselves.
What is your website?
Our website it's our acronym. It's DGSD, Downers Grove Sanitary District.org. So our website is www.dgsd.org. So you can go there, and there's a customer service page on the website that you can get to.
My compliments to Downers Grove Sanitary, because we did that after one of my many floods in my property, and they haven't had an issue since we put the backflow valve in. So
Yeah,
it does work.
It provides positive protection. It's for you to protect yourself against a sanitary backup. It doesn't help with surface water, but it does help with the sanitary backup.
Who's that packet for?
This is for the Lucases.
He's my neighbor. He's in the other room.
Oh, okay, all right. I'll be sure and give it to him.
Okay, yeah.
You'll have to point him out to me when we're done. Yeah, that'd be great. So, and that's really about all I wanted to add to Tom's comments. We function the same way. Does anybody else have any questions? Yes.
I just have a question because you talked about the different kind of sewers. How do you know, like the one that's at the front of our house, how do we find out what kind of sewer that is?
Are you a customer of the Downers Grove or
Yes.
Flag Creek Downers Grove? Ask me afterwards. I have some maps we can take a look at, and I should be able to find them.
Great, thanks.
Okay.
Thank you very much. During open forum, of course, there were a lot of questions, and we're not going to be able to answer all of them tonight, but Steve May from Public Works will respond to some of the things that can be answered more briefly, and then we'll continue through the agenda. So, Steve.
Can't have that door open.
It would be difficult to get into any of the individual comments. Took a lot of notes, but something stood out as, I guess I'll just say, fall into certain types of categories. I was glad to see the two districts talk about, there were, comments about sewer backup and sewer capacities and questions about cross connection, and it's not so much the, the capacity of the sanitary sewer. It is, like they said, is designed to accommodate what it's supposed to be accommodating. It's the stormwater that's getting into the sanitary sewer is the problem. It's not making the sanitary sewers bigger so that they can take the stormwater burden out. So those types of things, there aren't cross connections, but there's no cross connections like with pipes, but certainly like when there's water and they're standing and flooding, the manholes that are throughout the network of the sanitary sewers all have water getting into them, and all the storm water that gets in the sanitary sewer is all unintentional, and that's what's causing the backup, because of course the sanitary sewers are all lower and at a lower level, and it's backwards access into the house. So that is, backflow prevention is a nice feature there. There were more than one comment that would be in a category of gates or valves or turning things on and off, and the sanitary district addressed what they do at their waste treatment facilities, but we get the same types of phone calls in Public Works about the water still standing out in the street in front of my house. When are you going to open the gate? Or if you're on the receiving end of all the water, it's like, why did you open the gate? And it's sitting down here, and there are no gates, there are no valves or ways that we can manipulate it. It's all draining by gravity, trying to go downhill, and not even downhill into the local neighborhoods, into low points, but trying to get through a storm sewer system further downhill and out of town. And very generally speaking, Westmont is the top of the hill of a major watershed, is why there's two sanitary districts, in fact. But we don't receive water from other communities or water passing through, or very little shortcuts through. All our water is what falls in town, and it leaves town. And you heard comments from Downers Grove describing one of those interfaces as well. So many of the questions were, about pond size or pump size. Many of these reoccurring problem areas that we have are at locations where they're just physically in the geographic low area of the surrounding region. Some have more basin, more area tributary to it, other are smaller. All of the little issues in the alleys, for example, and flooding into the yard, that is that little local, might be just a local low spot in the block, and all that water sitting there until the sewer's got capacity for somewhere to go. So these aren't simple solutions, and similarly, you can't just install big pumps everywhere and just start cranking everything downhill. Not only is that wrong, it would be, there's all kinds of regulation, both, state, county. It's well regulated as far as how we have to manage it. So if you're going to relocate flooding problems, you almost have to find a different place for that water to store while it's waiting to go down and be released. And that's the fundamental theory behind a detention basin. Is in a development, you're storing all that water, that new water that was at Genoff, and then releasing it at a rate that would be more resembling what would have been there before there was a development. And so these types of approaches have to keep going.
I'm going to jump in real quick because
Sure.
That's a good transition to introduce Pete DeCiani from the county, and he's going to talk about
Great.
Not only. Obviously, we have a lot of folks here tonight talking about Westmont, but the problem extends well beyond Westmont. This most recent incident, all of Northeast Illinois, and Pete's with the county, so he'll speak to that.
Thank you, and my condolences to the people that have had water. Water is probably one of the worst things you could deal with as a homeowner. My name is Pete DeCiani. I'm the DuPage County Commissioner who represents the 2nd District. I'm also accompanied by John Curran, who actually represents the 3rd District. Both of those districts overlap Westmont. I am actually a Stormwater Commissioner. I sit on the committee and vote for funding and vote for buyouts in cases like Larry, where you're in a position that you might need a buyout. Get on the list, and Tony Charlton is our Chief of Staff here that handles all the stormwater. We'll get you on the list and see if we can get FEMA to help us and and get your property bought off. If it's one of those rarities that's in a low spot that's just almost impossible to fix, buyouts are an option. If you have an old bungalow, like the one I grew up in Elmhurst, that might not have an overhead sewer, talk to your sanitary districts and try to get on the overhead sewer program. Many of them have 50-50 plans where they'll help you protect your home. Best move you can make. My father made the move in Elmhurst and protected our house as well, too. 14 communities in DuPage County either declared emergency or disaster in this last storm. 14 communities, Elmhurst included. I was mayor of Elmhurst for 4 years, and it was the second mayor in 130 years to declare a disaster for my town in 2010. Not a fun thing to do, as mayors can attest. It's probably the worst thing you can do for your community, but it's the best thing you can do to get help from FEMA and to get relief from the federal government. But to put that in perspective, the mayor was my interim mayor, had signed that same declaration. He was mayor for 5 months. So very, very challenging things for communities. We had evacuations in Lisle. We had evacuations in Hinsdale. Westmont got hit hard. Elmhurst had 1,100 homes that are documented with flooding. So you're not alone. We're here to help you. If you've got buyouts, please get that information to the county. We'll do whatever we can to help these residents that have had consistent, low positions where they just can't get a way out. We're here to help. And I'm Representative John Curran, our floor leader, is here today, making sure that the county's got a voice, and you're not alone in the battle. We're here to help you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Obviously, with an issue of this magnitude, there are no quick answers and there are no inexpensive answers. And funding is the biggest component of addressing these issues. And as I'm sure anyone in this community who pays attention to the goings-on of the village municipal government, we have been tight on budget for 10 years and continually reducing our budgets just based upon the revenues that we receive from taxes. But to address these issues, we have to come up with funding resources. So I'm going to introduce our finance director, Spencer Parker, to talk about some of those ideas.
Right, I'm going to cover this at a very high level, kind of just talk about some of the different types of funding that we could do and give a rough estimate of potential costs. Obviously, the specific costs will be determined, based on what level we end up doing and what projects are done. But we could be looking at as much as around $30 million to take care of a lot of these problems. As you're all aware, that's a large amount of money and not something that we have the ability to fund on our own right now. We would have to go out for bonds to be able to get the money for those kind of projects. And in order to go out for bonds, you have to be able to identify revenue sources to cover some of those. And so I've prepared a matrix that's shown up here of some of the different sources we could look to for funding. And when you're looking at the sources for funding, there's really, the method you choose depends on the answer to 2 different questions that have to be determined. The first one is who's going to be contributing to this, either the entire community or the areas specifically impacted by the project. And then the second one is the methodology for collecting that money, how it's going to be distributed among those who are participating. One option is through taxes, which would be administered by the state or the county, either property tax or a sales tax type of a thing. And then the second option is to do some other method, which is typically would be administered by the village. So looking through the matrix, if we're looking at having the entire community support these types of projects, and we want to do it through taxes, we'd be looking at having a referendum, which couldn't happen until the November 2014 election. So there could be a referendum either for something like adding an additional property tax or adding on a sales tax of some kind. And those would be options that could be discussed at the referendum. And if we're looking at a property tax, it would potentially cost as much as around $375 for an average home if we were to do that sort of a property tax. It would be about $375 a year for an average home. If we were to do a sales tax, then we would be looking at around 1 to 1.5% sales tax to cover that cost. And those would have to be approved by a referendum at this point. If we wanted to have the entire community support it through some method other than taxes, there's the possibility to set up a stormwater utility. I know the county is working on that, and they're looking into that option. Potentially, the village could look at a similar thing and base the amounts that people contribute on something other than just the value of their homes or the amount of money they spend. And it would be, you could base it on a number of different things, including, impermeable surface, variety of different options that would be available to us. If you're looking at specifically having the areas that are impacted by the project fund this, if you're looking at taxes, that would be a special service area where the properties that are directly impacted, that are right around the projects that are done, would have an additional amount put onto their property taxes. And the amount would vary by location and vary by project. If you wanted to just have the areas impacted by the project take care of it, but you didn't want to fund it through taxes, there's another method which you could do, which is a special assessment, where the village would determine the methodology by which they were calculating how much was contributed, and then it would be based on a formula of that sort. So there's several different options that can be addressed going forward to try to find this money, but really the method you use is going to be determined based on the answer to the question as to who should be contributing to it, and then how you want to calculate how much each person who is contributing contributes. That's
Since the village is no longer home rule, the ability for the village to come up with some of these special assessments is limited, is it not? And if that's the case, what of those four that are identified in the matrix there, what of those four could the village itself institute without any, referendum, as is pointed out in the first box there? If we didn't have a referendum, what could the village do?
We would certainly be able to do a special service area, which would be, impacting the areas directly impacted. And we can certainly be looking into stormwater utility. I'm not entirely sure exactly how that would work, not being home rule, but we can look into that in the future.
Special service area requires at least 51% of the property owners in that area to not object to make that function, and that's not tied to home rule or non-home rule status.
You mentioned that $300 and some for each resident.
Yes.
It's going to be in a...
So if...
For how many years would that be so that residents understand? And I do too.
It would depend on the length of the bond issue, but I would guess we would potentially be looking at around up to maybe 20 years.
And Spencer, what was the total dollar amount we projected?
And that's all based on a guesstimate of about $30 million worth of total projects. So, and all of that would have to be identified and addressed in further detail before we move forward with it. But some rough estimates.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And obviously with all the information that Spencer just presented to us, which is, when it gets down to the bottom line, that's what we have to deal with, is figuring out how are we going to generate revenue to accomplish the things that we want to do. There's a lot of questions with that, and it'll take, truthfully, all of the community to participate in a conversation to find out what the priorities are for the community. And ultimately, if it goes to, let's say it does go to like a referendum, even when it goes to referendum, then it would have to be approved. And something that we learned from our most recent referendum, and something that is worth repeating, the village cannot advocate for or against a referendum. It has to be a public initiative. So it's the type of thing where we can present factual information, but then it's up to the general public to embrace or not embrace an idea to move forward. But ultimately, that's probably where things need to move to get funding to make these things happen. The last item here on the agenda is talking about the creation of a community storm walk. You got a question over there. Sir, would you like to come to the microphone?
All right, the microphone, go ahead.
And this
Microphone. Can you hear me?
No. Is it on?
Okay. My name's Joseph Lucas. I live at 15 North Washington here in town. Either I or my family, that's my introduction, and you can start your 3 minutes when I start the text, but I don't wish to, I want to congratulate the board for their new members. But most of all, I and my family have lived here since 1966. We lived at 51 East Quincy. We lived at 134 West Quincy. We have been inundated with stormwater most of the time, no matter where the location was. Most of all, at my handicap home now. My wife is a cancer recovery patient. We have a handicap ramp out in front. Because of stormwater, we could not leave the residence for almost 24 hours, okay? We want to know why stormwater retention is not taken care of in our area, why runoff is not taken care of when a lot is available that is underwater at any time you have stormwater greater than an inch, okay? The lot I'm talking about is probably bought or sold by now, but why doesn't someone, before a lot is bought or sold, they actually survey it and question the people or tell the people that are buying this lot that it should be a retention area, not a place to build a home, okay? One of the problems by us is we don't have that many storm sewers near the problem area where the water's coming from. I have an alley behind me where the water comes from the alley into the back of my garage and all the way to almost the front of the garage. It's been doing this for 26 years, or when the building was built, okay? From there, it's a problem because the village came and gave me a small sewer. What's it called, Tina? All right, it's a drain, okay? And it's got zero amount of gravity to take the water from the storm to from that sewer to the street out in front, okay? The real water is not from that area. It's from the alley that all the other lots around are empty into, okay? I no longer have a driveway because it's under 4 inches of mud, okay? The lot itself is underwater after any amount of rain, okay? You can come out there and try to wade through it, okay? Storm water, or storm sewers have been given to other properties in the area. The people involved in that know about that. They have promised. I went through the paperwork of having a survey and a sworn statement of the storm water or storm sewer that I needed back in, I think, Bella Reeves. I'm not sure who was the mayor at the time, okay? I can find out for you. I have people on the board that know that I tell the truth, okay? And that I have this problem, okay? It's been that problem for many, many administrations. I got a button on here that says, I love Westmont, okay? I've got one for one of the board members here who I had a placard out in the front yard, and I know him personally. There's no prejudice there about how much I love this town. We've stayed here. We were away for a short period of time. We had 2 houses in Lisle. Then we came back because we liked this town and we liked Holy Trinity, okay? Sure. They're the only church in town that put a marquee up that welcomed people to come to this meeting tonight. I don't know how many came because of that sign, but hey, they did it, you know? It doesn't make us any better than anybody else. I'm going to shut up now, and thank you very much. And you got a hell of a problem, and I wish you the very best, because it's been a problem, not just me, but there used to be a Kmart on Ogden Avenue, and everybody north of there used to get rowboats to get around during the rain. Not anymore. Now they just have for sale signs.
Just for the record, can we have your address again?
15 North Washington.
15 North Washington, thank you.
Westmont, Illinois. 15 North Washington, Westmont, Illinois.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that's a good segue into the conclusion of the meeting, because the reality is we can probably continue to talk with everybody in the room at great length about individual situations that need to be addressed, and basically what that absolutely means is the conversation has to continue. And at the end of the agenda here, it says Community Stormwater Ad Hoc Committee, and staff and Mayor Gunther, we've discussed the idea of creating this committee and seeking representation from residents from throughout the village. Obviously, we have from the map that Steve presented earlier, flooding is all over our community. And so definitely from these different areas where we're being hit, we would like representation. And I would say as early as this upcoming Monday, we will have a press release on our village website in which would ask people to supply information to be involved in that. But then right away, our goal is as soon as we get people signed up for that, we'll review it, we'll create that committee, and start moving forward. Mayor Gunther, anything to add to that?
No, I think it's important to, I think for everybody to know, 4 of us, I think somebody said, are new to this. It's our first time, other than Mr. Addington, who served many years ago. So a lot of this is new to us. And we're your neighbors, and I think we care and we want to do something for you, and that's why we started this meeting tonight. I think my goal would be to form this committee and try to get someone from each quadrant or area in the community to serve on that committee so we could start looking for solutions and answers and to really start going back to your neighbors and residents and tell them some of our plans and ideas.
Right.
So that's my goal. I'd like to have people who are interested sign up. And Larry, we can do that by a number of ways.
Yeah, we'll do that online through the village website. That would be the easiest way. We'll create an online form for that. But if anyone wanted to contact me directly, I'll announce my cell phone, which is 630-417-0280. Once again, my name is Larry McIntyre, so I can be reached through the Village Hall main phone system, of course. But we'll get information from all the folks who are interested in participating, and we'll get that committee going, and we'll continue the conversation, but the goal is to hit the ground running and move quickly. From this meeting, we have a lot of data entry, so we're going to review these recordings and put all of that into additional information that we have from the past, but all of that's going to be utilized as we move forward and try to figure out solutions.
And again, we wish we could have immediate answers, but we can't. And it's very impossible to do that. But I think we want to keep moving forward to try to help everybody. So I think that's the goal, and I know we all agree. Again, tonight, we probably haven't had the opportunity to answer your questions, but I think staff in the upcoming weeks, and especially if we form this committee, we'll have the opportunity maybe to answer some of these questions or maybe give you a better insight of what we're dealing with. Tonight, I'd like to thank, I think, the representatives that have been here from DuPage County, Flag Creek Sanitation District, and the Downers Grove Sanitation District, along with FEMA. Now, FEMA will stay here for as long as they need to. If anybody else needs to see them in the adjoining room, we'll stay here as long as that takes. Most importantly tonight, I want to thank our residents for coming tonight and sharing their concerns. This is a difficult subject, and we have a lot of work ahead of us. On behalf of the Village Board, I want you to know that we are committed to following through on addressing these concerns, and I ask everyone to look at our website and other resources regarding updates pertaining to the Stormwater Management Ad Hoc Committee. Again, apologize for not being able to have a lot of answers, but I've learned a lot this evening. I think that the fellow trustees and who just got on the board, I know the trustees have been on the board. This has been an ongoing experience for them. I was amazed at looking at the stormwater management report of how detailed that is, and I know we just had that 2 years ago. So that's just been available, and we're just getting ready to start implementing that when the whole home rule issue happened. So I think as a board, we're committed to addressing all our infrastructure, not only stormwater management, but our roads. So I think that's a priority. I think that's what we heard the residents say during this last campaign. We need to take care of our own, and I think we're going to do that. It's not going to be a quick fix, but it's going to take time. Somebody's phone is that one? Oh, there it is. Other than that, is there any other trustees who'd like to make any concluding comment?
Sorry. I don't know if you're looking here or there, but I'd like to explain to all the residents that I'm a victim of this also. I've had continuous stormwater backup, and concern for me. I'm going to be a part of the committee, and any way we can help you. I know all of us, Jim, I think you're a victim of this too, that we've all felt the same pain, or a lot of us have, and so we share the same concerns. the same kind of loss, the same kind of lack of coverage. I felt that too, and still am feeling that, much like a lot of you. So I feel for you, and I will try to work for you on that. Thank you.
I would just like to say that it's even more evident after hearing everyone's story tonight how much pain and suffering our residents have been going through for a number of years, and we want to work very hard to fix that. But even beyond that, I'd like to take an opportunity to say thank you to our staff, because our street and water department, every single department in this village was out working, trying to aid our residents, trying to help clear the water, whatever we could possibly do. And many of those folks had flooding basements at home and spouses at home to deal with it, and they still came to work to help our community. So they're really committed. We're all committed to making this work. And I just want to say thank you to our staff, to everyone from every single department, because every single employee played a role that horrible, horrible 2 days that none of us will ever forget, or not anytime soon. So thank you to them.
Let's get to work on the problem.
I couldn't agree with you more. Jim, anything?
No, sir.
Steve, Bruce?
I just want to thank everybody for coming. You know, it's something that it's hard to hear, it's hard to listen to, but we needed it to be said, we needed it on the record, and, you know, I'm going to give everything I can to help make a difference as well.
Likewise, this isn't fun at all. I too live right next to a creek. One of my next door neighbors was here talking about it, and it is no fun. Water is very powerful, and I can tell you all of us are on the same page. We're ready to get to work and fix this as best we can, and we will. I know we will. It's just, you know, we appreciate everybody's cooperation and patience, and, you know, we'll work out some solutions.
Again, on one last note, and I know that this has been a very serious meeting, but Harold, happy birthday. Today is Harold's birthday, and I had to at least mention that. So he spent this evening with everybody listening about flooding issues, and I saw you get your FEMA report filled out. I saw you sneak back. Again, I thank everyone for attending, and I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move, Seneca.
Second, Nero.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.